Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise tonight to close the loop on some of the matters that we've discussed in this chamber. Very often in this chamber, we debate we debate bills and we pass legislation which become acts in this wonderful Northern Territory of ours. Very important work. But not so often do we get to evaluate in real time almost the effects that the bills that we pass have. So I rise tonight to draw attention to a recent decision of the Supreme Court in Alice Springs by His Honour Justice John Reeves in the King versus EM 2025 NTSC 31, decision dated 9th of May 2025. I rise to speak about this decision because this is a decision which His Honour has made on appeal to in the Supreme Court in Alice Springs, which deals directly with the two signature pieces of legislation of this Assembly. The first being Declan's Law, which changed the presumption of bail, and the second being the amendments to the Bail Act, which we passed on urgency quite recently in this House. So I'll read certain extracts. I won't read, there's a lot that I won't read because there's matters to do with the offending, even though the offender is still on bail, and I won't identify the offender, but the nature of the offending is not relevant to this discussion. What is relevant is that the Justice, when considering to grant bail to this individual, said, and he had a position where the defence and the prosecution appeared to be in favour of bail. And he writes in his decision, even though that was the agreed position of the parties, because the defendant had pled guilty to a very serious offence, I was not willing to act on it. He then goes on to say the effect of the amendments, in considering the matters in section 24 and 24A, the amendments, meaning the amendments that we passed recently, have made two important changes. First, the risk, if any, to the safety of the community that would result if a person were released on bail is the, and he puts this in quotes, the paramount consideration of the criteria prescribed by those provisions. A paramount consideration is one that must be treated as the highest level of importance. This is the words of a Justice of the Supreme Court of the Northern Territory. He is saying a paramount consideration is one that must be treated as the highest level of importance. Nonetheless, other considerations are not entirely excluded, they are only subordinated. Secondly, remanding a youth in custody is no longer to be considered as the option of last resort. He goes on, the second step is mandated under section 7A. It occurs if an applicant for bail, he goes on with some technical matters. It requires the decision maker to consider separately or in isolation from the matters considered under the first step, whether they have, and here is the key words, Madam Speaker, a high degree of confidence, those key words, a high degree of confidence that the person will not, if released on bail, either commit a prescribed offence or a serious violence offence, or otherwise endanger the safety of the community. He goes on, the defendant's offending was of a sexual nature, it was violent and very serious. These features of it raise the obvious question as to what, if any, criminogenic and or psychological factors influenced it. I highlighted in my notes the next sentence. Any proper assessment of the risk that the defendant poses to women in the Alice Springs community were the defendant to be released on bail, therefore, in my view, requires consideration of those factors. So this is key. He is considering the safety of the people and the women of Alice Springs in his decision. And he's linking it directly to our amendments. He then goes on with some matters of psychological reports tendered by the defence. He continues, "It follows I do not have any evidence before me with respect to the criminogenic or psychological factors affecting EM's offending the defendant, such that I can make any proper assessment." He continues, "Since that risk is the paramount consideration," again, paramount consideration under Section 24 of the Bail Act, "it necessarily follows that I do not consider that the defendant has discharged his onus to overcome the presumption against bail prescribed by Section 7A(2) of that Act." The presumption against bail, which we in this House, on this side of the chamber, passed as part of Declan's law. He concludes, "For those reasons, I refuse the defendant's application for bail." So, this decision dated the 9th of May is evidence of the two signature laws in terms of the crime and bail space already working. And I thank Justice John Reeves he goes into great detail laying out how the Act works and the various functions and lots of legal things that are far beyond my mortal knowledge. But this is evidence that our laws are working and they're fulfilling their intended purpose by keeping Territorians and keeping the women of the Northern Territory safe. Thank you, Madam Speaker.